Hello pilots, welcome back. It's Plasma and we're still looking at the Cold War Germany map. But before we get there, let's look at Cauc to see how a baseline in comparison. Memory usage, 28 gigabytes in VR, and the GPU is around 95% with 12 gigs of RAM used. This is Cauc's, and this is the Torture map, which you can download by searching Plasma Torture map on Eagle Dynamics files. As you can see, we're also getting around 75 to 80 FPS. And this is a very heavy map with lots of script activities. Now switching over to the Germany map, here's the settings, and yeah, go back, pause them, take a look at them. But as you can see here, our memory usage has gone up. Now, the hardware is the same. It's a 4090, 64 gigs of RAM, and a Pimax Crystal, flying at quality settings within the Pimax settings. Now, memory has gone up to 50 gigabytes. Before that, I've seen it around 46, but now we're at a full 50 with 14 gigabytes of VRAM being used, which is quite a bit. Now I cropped in on this shot so that you guys have a full screen view, but the actual VR render is in the top left hand corner. So by cropping like this, you're losing a little bit of quality, but it just makes it a little bit nicer for folks watching on YouTube. As you can see, the FPS varies between 55 to about 65 FPS. When you lock it into a full 60, it stays pretty close to that 60 FPS all the way through. The GPU is being used fully, so it is fully capped out, and the CPU is at around 64%. Now, I am recording, so you'd probably get an extra 5 or so FPS back if you're not recording the video, but as you can see, the level of detail is quite incredible. I am all around very impressed by the optimization, but also by the level of detail in this map. It really is, I don't think there's anything really to compare it to with this much buildings, terrain, and also it's green. So would this map be a buy? Yes, if you have enough memory, it's definitely a buy. Even if you have a 3060 video card, as long as you don't mind doing 1080p with medium settings, you should still be able to run this game. But again, get that extra memory, and if you can, get a video card with VRAM of at least 12 to 16 gigs. So external views, here's my flanker, here's a Yak 52, Floggett's gonna love this. And outside views, as you can see, the memory usage stays around the same, slowly crept up to 53 gigabytes, but the FPS will vary. Over the fields, you're going to get about 70 FPS, over big forests down to 60, over towns, sometimes dropping into the 50s. So let's take a look at some of these SAM launches on the A10 as it presses the A10. I think this one might survive. Is it going to make it? Notched, very nice. But even though it survived the first one, let's see, will it survive the second missile? No, there's a hit. Make sure you hit subscribe and like too, by the way, and leave a comment as to your experience. But from everybody that I've had feedback on YouTube, everyone's getting pretty good performance. And here's your switching maps. You can see the load times. As you load up different parts of the map, it will take a little bit longer to load. So having a fast SSD or an NVMe drive makes a big difference. Watching the BTR-80 drive through the parks in Berlin, our FPS definitely drops into the 50s. And this is because our shadows are turned up and our foliage is turned up quite a bit. So there's a lot of detail to contend with. Now if we go around and start messing around with our clutter and grass, we can get rid of grass completely, but from what I've seen, it doesn't affect too much on the FPS side. Maybe 2-3 FPS max. Forest visibility, dropping it makes the forest look a little thinner, but because there's so many forests on this map, again, it doesn't make a huge difference. Now, a tank rolls through. Did we get much FPS back? Not much, but as we are flying out of the major city here back to the forests, lowering the forest density has definitely given us a little bit more FPS when we're not looking at the buildings. We've gone from the mid 60s to 70s, but let's turn the airplane back around and look towards the cities. As you can see, as we make this turn here, our FPS almost instantly starts dropping. And this is mainly happening because we are coming around from facing the fields and the trees, and now we're flying back towards the city. Each of the small houses, each of the large houses will cast shadows because we have shadows enabled, and so of course that will add to the complexity that the video card has to render. So here we've turned around back into the city, and we're sitting at about 60 FPS, down from about 75, 80 FPS when we were flying away from the city. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start messing around here with a couple of settings here that you can change while you're flying. One of them is the level of detail switch factor, which I've lowered slightly. and this is at which distance does the detail on an object kick in. So for example, a round dome of, say, a radar dome will be more square for a longer period of time before it becomes more detailed and actually turns into a circle. Same thing applies to shapes of buildings and other structures. But as you can see, lowering that didn't make too much of a difference. We've gained about 2 or 3 FPS from that change. But there's other additions that you can make to your settings. And I would always recommend that you do play with these based on your video card. But as I said in the past, one of the biggest things that can improve your performance, whether it's in flat screen, PC monitor flights, or in VR, is cutting back on the shadows and lowering anti-aliasing. Those are the typical things that use up quite a bit of processing power. But as you can see here, every single tree will cast a shadow, and that does task the video card and the processor. So as we enter the city and we fly along here, I'm going to pause and we're going to make a couple of other tweaks here with the scenery object factor. Now, scenery object factor is actually quite interesting. I'm playing with the slider here, and you can see that the detail on the buildings drops. They become kind of, well, boxes with low details. Now, as you increase those, more detail on the textures kicks in. This is at low, and then by medium, you'll get some more detail, and at high, you'll actually get finer detail on these buildings. Now, this lowers the overall required memory that's required, and also makes it easier for your video card to handle the geometry of the buildings. If we look closely, that's where really you will see this, and if you're flying high up doing air-to-air, it might not be a big deal for you, so you can definitely drop that. But if you're getting down into the weeds and you want to fly and do air-to-ground attacks, it will make quite a bit of a difference. So I recommend for those flying up high, lower it, and for those who are on the ground flying choppers or strike aircraft or attack aircraft, you can definitely increase it. So here's an example. That bus turns from a weird brick into an actual bus when you increase the level of detail, scenery detail. And this applies to other objects, even pipes that are over by those buildings there. They're turning from pipes into random triangles. So it kind of goes from a very primitive shape with less detail into a much finer shape with concrete blocks having rivets on them. Now, how much of a performance difference does it give us? Well, based on the test that I did here, we're looking at about 2 to 5 frames per second, what I can see on the 4090. Again, if you're flying fast, and if you're not looking for specific details, you probably won't even see any difference here. So you can definitely turn the scene detail factor down, especially if you're doing air-to-air. Drop that all the way down. Now, did we gain a lot of FPS? No, not a heck of a lot, but we're going to pause right here over these cranes at the port, and let's take a look at them as well. And this shows even more of a difference between that scenery detail. Again, if you're up high, you're not even going to see them. Who cares? But down low, the cranes go from very blocky, almost, Cauc to Cauc kind of quality, and the ship containers as well, into much more detailed cranes and objects, like those concrete bricks down there, for example. They lose their little metal rivets and so forth. So there you go. That's the difference in the scenery level of detail. If it will make a difference for your video card, probably 5-6 FPS. But if you really need that FPS, it will make that much of a difference. So check it out. I'll see you guys in the next video. Make sure you, as always, subscribe, leave a comment, and let me know how your VR performance is with this map. So far, I'm very impressed. Catch you later. Plasma's out of here.